It's strange, thinking about it now. Almost a year later. I was 26, working a pretty standard office job, and honestly, life felt settled. Every morning I'd grab a latte from the same place, then head to the gym after work. A really predictable routine, I know. It wasn't anything special, but it was mine. And for a while, I just assumed everything was normal when I noticed someone else seemed to be falling into the same pattern. The gym was packed as usual. Around 6, I was on the treadmill, trying to ignore the guy hogging both weight benches, when I saw him again. The one from the train, the coffee shop, everywhere. He wasn't on a machine, just standing by the free weights, not lifting, not stretching, just watching people. It wasn't creepy in a leering way, more like he was studying technique, which, okay, people do that, but he was focused on everyone, cycling through faces, lingering a beat too long. He'd mimic a movement, a slight shoulder rotation during a bicep curl, the way someone braced during a squat, just a small twitch of his own body, then move on to the next person. I tried to look away, focus on my pace, but my peripheral vision kept catching him. He was now watching a woman doing lunges, and he was doing this weird little bounce matching her rhythm. I sped up the treadmill, pretending to push myself harder. Then he started to copy her form, exactly. Not lifting weights, just doing the lunges, perfectly mirroring her. And this is where it got off. The woman was doing standard lunges controlled. He wasn't. He was dropping, almost collapsing with each one, his back rounding, knees buckling. It wasn't a mimicry of form. It was a mimicry of effort. He almost fell, like he genuinely stumbled and had to catch himself on a weight rack. And the woman didn't even notice. She just kept going. I instinctively hit the emergency stop on the treadmill, nearly throwing myself forward. I just stared. He looked up, caught my eye for a split second, and gave this small, tight smile. Not friendly, not menacing, just acknowledging. I grabbed my bag and walked out. I told myself he was probably just really into fitness, maybe a new trainer trying to learn by observation. It was a dumb explanation even then, but I needed it to be something, anything. I haven't been back to that gym since. I started taking the long way home from work. It wasn't a huge detour, just a few extra blocks. It added 15 minutes to the commute, but it took me past a different coffee shop, a different dry cleaner, different everything. I told Sarah it was because I wanted to try that new Thai place everyone was talking about. That felt plausible. It was a week after the gym. I kept telling myself it was just a weird coincidence. It was a really unsettling coincidence, but still. Then I saw him on the bus. Not on the bus exactly, but standing on the corner as the bus approached. He was looking not at the bus schedule, but directly at me, through the window. He didn't get on the bus. He just watched until the bus pulled away at my stop. I tried to tell myself he lived nearby, that we just happened to be waiting at the same corner. But that corner wasn't on the way to anywhere he'd reasonably be going, not from what I'd seen at the gym. Then, yesterday, I noticed my building's security camera. It's one of those new ones that sends you notifications when it detects motion. I got an alert at 2:17 a.m., just a shadow moving near the entrance. I checked the footage. It was him. He was just standing there, not trying to open the door, not doing anything, just standing in the dark, facing the building. I thought maybe he was lost or waiting for someone. It was cold out. I almost felt bad, but then I realized he was facing my window, the one on the 3rd floor, the one I always leave the blinds slightly open. He was looking right at me. I closed them, obviously. I haven't opened them since. It's not a coincidence anymore, is it? It's something else, something I absolutely don't understand. I didn't go to the gym. Not today. Not even considered it. I called in sick and said I had a migraine. My boss didn't sound convinced, but she let it go. I needed to get out of the city. Just away. I packed a bag, a ridiculously small one, like I was going to a spa for an afternoon, not running from whatever that was. I was halfway to the highway when I remembered my wallet. I left it on the kitchen counter. I almost turned around, but the thought of going back, of even seeing my apartment building again, I just kept driving. Cash would have to do. Then I remembered the plant. My grandmother gave it to me, a little jade thing. I always watered it on Tuesdays. Today was Tuesday, It felt stupid, agonizing over a plant, but it felt important. Like if I abandoned it, I'd be abandoning something else, something bigger. I told myself he was just lonely, maybe a little obsessed with fitness, a little socially awkward. People get like that. It didn't explain the standing outside my window, but it felt better than the alternative. I pulled over to check my phone to see if I'd missed any calls. That's when I saw it. A small white envelope taped to my windshield. It had no stamp and no return address. Just my name, printed in block letters. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I ripped it open. Inside was a single photograph, a picture of my plant, on my kitchen windowsill, taken from inside my apartment. The photograph felt wrong. Not just the invasion, but the angle. It wasn't taken standing in the doorway. It was higher, like from the top of the refrigerator. I checked, scrambling onto a chair, eyes scanning everything. Nothing disturbed, no sign he'd been climbing on things. It just didn't make sense. I called in sick, said I had a migraine. My boss sounded annoyed, but what else could I do? I needed to figure out what was happening. I spent the day rearranging furniture, trying to create blind spots, imagining lines of sight. It felt pathetic, like playing a game against someone who already knew all the rules. I decided to try and be normal, go to the gym. Maybe if I showed him I wasn't scared, he'd stop. It was a stupid idea. I knew it the second I walked through the door. He was already there, not looking at me, not acknowledging me, just lifting. Same routine as always. The methodical, precise movements. It wasn't about me being there, it was about him being present. I tried to change my routine, taking a different route home, varying my gym times. Nothing worked. He was always adjacent. A shadow in the periphery, and then yesterday I found the flyer tucked under my windshield wiper, just like the photo. A missing person report, a young woman. Similar build to me, same dark hair. The flyer mentioned she frequented the same coffee shop I do. It hit me then. He wasn't fixated on me. He was searching. He thought I'd seen something, knew something about what happened to her, and I hadn't. I literally hadn't. But now, I was sure. He wasn't going to stop until he found what he was looking for, and I was somehow tangled up in it. I just had to be careful. It's been years. I still check the locks, of course, not obsessively, not like I used to, but before bed every single night. It's just a habit. A bad one, probably. It's not him, I know that. He's been gone for a long time, I think. After the flyer, I went to the police. They were polite, mostly dismissive. They said they'd look into it, but the missing woman's case had gone cold months ago. They asked if I knew her, if I'd seen anything. I told them everything, about the photo, the flyer, the way he watched. They took my statement and my number. I never heard back. I started seeing a therapist just to talk. I told her I thought he was building a case against me, that he believed I was involved in her disappearance. She suggested I was projecting, that the stress of being watched had made me paranoid. Maybe she was right. I did start to see patterns where there weren't any. I moved eventually. Not far, just a different part of the city. I kept the same job though. It felt important to not let him win completely. I still go to that coffee shop sometimes, but I always sit with my back to the wall. I scan the faces even though I know it's ridiculous. It's not a conscious thing. It just happens. I used to volunteer at the animal shelter on Saturdays. I loved it. Now I can't. Not anymore. There was a man who started coming in around the same time as me. He was tall and kept to himself. He never looked at me, but he was always present. It wasn't him, I'm sure, but it felt too close. I haven't gone back since. It feels silly, even saying it now, but the quiet satisfaction of helping those animals just doesn't outweigh the feeling that I'm always being watched. It's been so long, and yet the memory feels so incredibly recent. It feels strange even typing this out, honestly, because for a long time it just felt weird. A few years ago, I was living in a city a couple hours from my family, working a pretty standard office job and trying to get used to having a roommate again after college. We'd both answered an ad and things were quiet, mostly a shared kitchen, occasional TV nights, that sort of thing. It wasn't until after a few months that I started noticing little things were off, and it's been stuck in my head ever since. Tuesday mornings were always the worst, not because of work exactly, but because Mark liked to make breakfast. Not a quick coffee and a granola bar, but a full bacon and eggs, pancakes and syrup breakfast, and he always played that jazz station, the one with the really scratchy recordings. It wasn't the music itself, though. It was the smell. It would just hang, like it was thicker than it should be. I was getting ready for a meeting, trying to match socks when I went to grab my toiletries bag from the bathroom counter. It wasn't there. I glanced around, thinking I'd maybe left it in my room, but no. Then I saw it, on the shelf, above the sink, tucked between Mark's shaving kit and a bottle of mouthwash. I definitely hadn't put it there. I always left it on the counter. My chest tightened for just a second. It was stupid. I know. He probably just moved it while cleaning. Mark was meticulous. A little too meticulous, maybe. I opened the bag, and everything was exactly as I'd left it, which was odd. If he'd been rummaging for something, wouldn't things be a little disturbed? I didn't say anything. I just took my bag, went to work, and tried to forget about it. Later, I figured he was trying to be helpful, organizing. He'd probably seen it on the counter and thought he was tidying up. It was a nice gesture, really. Still, I started putting my bag away immediately after using it. Just to be sure, it felt better that way. Like I was controlling something, even if I couldn't place what. Tuesday mornings. It was always Tuesday mornings with the jazz. Not loud, just present, filling the apartment while I tried to get ready. I started leaving for work earlier just to avoid it. Not because of the music itself, it was actually kind of nice, but because of everything else. I noticed my desk lamp was angled differently. Just a little. I'm pretty obsessive about symmetry. Always have been. And then the books. I organize them by color. It's ridiculous, I know, but it makes me feel calm. A couple of them were out of order, not randomly, but shifted, like someone had been browsing. I started checking things, ridiculously checking things. The kitchen drawers, my closet, even the inside of the cereal boxes. I know it sounds insane. I thought maybe I was losing it. Stress from work, maybe, lack of sleep. But then I found the pen. It was one of those really cheap ballpoints from the bank. I get them in bulk. I use them for quick notes, nothing important. I had a whole stack in my desk drawer. Now there was one on the kitchen counter next to Mark's coffee mug, a different one, but the same kind, and it had a tiny smear of what looked like paint. I don't paint. Mark doesn't paint. I started assuming he was sleepwalking. It was the only thing that made sense. He'd always seemed so grounded. A little rigid maybe, but not unstable. It explained the toiletries bag, the books, the lamp. He was just doing things unconsciously. I even started leaving little notes for him. Hey, just letting you know the lamp was facing the wrong way, just to see if he'd mention anything. He never did. He'd just nod and say, "Oh, okay," and then go back to listening to his jazz. Last night, I swear I heard him moving around in the kitchen around 3 a.m. I pretended to be asleep. I didn't want to confront him. It felt wrong, like I'd be breaking some kind of unspoken rule. This morning, though, this morning was different. This morning was different. The jazz wasn't on. That was the first thing. Usually it starts right at 7, a gentle easing into Tuesdays, silence, and the kitchen. The kitchen was wrong. Not messy, not exactly. Everything was shifted, like someone had taken all the items and moved them 1 inch to the left. The cereal boxes, the fruit bowl, even the stupid little ceramic frog I got at a flea market, 1 inch each. I thought maybe I was losing it. Really losing it. I've been stressed with work, and sleep hasn't been great. I made coffee, trying to ignore it, but it kept pulling at me. It wasn't just the arrangement, it was the smell. Faint, but definitely there, like dust and something metallic. Old pennies, maybe? Then I heard it, coming from the hallway closet. A soft scraping like nails on wood. Mark keeps his winter coat in there, some old boxes. I froze, listening. It stopped, it started again, slower this time, and then a voice not loud, barely a whisper. It wasn't English or anything I recognized. It sounded dry, like leaves rustling in a fire. I backed away slowly, bumping into the counter. A mug clattered, but I didn't even register it. I just needed to get out. I thought maybe Mark was having some kind of episode, a fugue state. He'd mentioned his grandmother had them. Maybe it's genetic, a strange linguistic outburst while sleepwalking. I grabbed my keys, my bag, anything. I didn't even think to wake him. As I reached the door, the scraping stopped, and the closet door creaked open. Just a crack. I didn't look. I just ran. I'm at a diner now, a few blocks away. The door to the apartment is still unlocked. I called the landlord and left a message. He'll probably think I'm crazy. I can still smell that metallic dust, and I keep hearing that voice, even over the clatter of the diner. The waitress keeps asking if I'm okay. I just nod and order more coffee. Black. It doesn't help with the smell, but it keeps me awake. I tried calling Mark again, straight to voicemail. The landlord called back, sounding mostly annoyed. He said he'd swing by in the morning. He asked if anything was missing, like stolen. I said no, just wrong. He scoffed. I went back. I shouldn't have, but I needed to. I needed to prove to myself it was just stress, exhaustion. The police were there, 2 of them, talking to the landlord in the hallway. They let me in. The apartment smelled worse. That metallic tang was heavier now. They'd been through the closet. It was empty, completely. Mark's coat, the boxes, everything gone. One of the officers, a woman with tired eyes, asked me about the sounds. I told her about the scraping, the whispering. She wrote it all down, her expression flat. Then she showed me something they found in the wall, behind the closet. A section of drywall had been cut out neatly, revealing older plaster. And underneath that, a layer of something dark, like dried mud, but not. They were testing it. The landlord said the building was old, with lots of renovations over the years, but the officer pointed to something else. Carved into the old plaster, barely visible, were symbols, not graffiti, something older. She said they were sending photos to a specialist. It's probably just some previous tenant, some weird hobby, I thought. Someone who liked to carve things into walls, a collector of dust. I tried to go back in, to get my laptop and my things, but I couldn't. The air in there felt thick, like it was pressing on my chest. Mark still hasn't called. I keep replaying the sound of that voice. It wasn't Mark. It wasn't a dream. They said the substance wasn't anything dangerous. Old paint mixed with something organic. Dust, mostly. The symbols were harder to place. The specialist said they resembled alchemical markings, but fragmented and distorted, like someone trying to copy something they didn't understand. They closed the hole in the wall and painted over it. The landlord offered to let me out of the lease, with no questions asked. I refused. It felt like giving in. I spent 1 week on my sister's couch. Mark still hadn't called. I started thinking he'd just left. Not a dramatic fight, not a sudden crisis, just quietly gone. It was the only thing that made any sense, given everything else. He'd always been a bit of a ghost, even when he was right there. Coming back to the apartment was the worst. It smelled clean, but underneath that, the metallic tang lingered. I started sleeping with the lights on, not all of them, just a small lamp in the kitchen, casting a circle of yellow on the floor. I told myself it was practical and made me feel safer, but it was the hallway I was really thinking about. Now I checked the locks, every single lock. Not just the deadbolt, but the window latches, even the little chain, and I run my hand along the inside of the door frame just to feel for, I don't even know what, a gap, a seam, something that shouldn't be there. It's ridiculous, I know. I do it in hotels now too. Every hotel, every rental. It's been years. It's just a habit, a stupid, pointless habit. It feels like a long time ago now, but I still check. I've been meaning to write this down for a while. Honestly, it happened almost 2 years ago now. I was in my late 20s, working a pretty standard office job, and mostly just trying to stick to a routine after a messy breakup. Things were normal, really. I'd go to the gym after work, grab coffee, maybe browse a bookstore on the weekend, and generally keep to myself. It didn't feel strange at the time, but looking back, it stuck with me more than most things should. The gym was mostly empty on Tuesdays, which was perfect. I'd get the treadmill facing the window and watch the gray city blur while I ran. It was predictable. That's what I wanted. I was halfway through my usual 5 miles when I saw him. Mark, from accounting. He wasn't at the gym, not exactly. He was across the street, standing on the corner, just watching. He wasn't looking at anything in particular, just there. It wasn't creepy. Not at first. People stand on corners. Maybe he was waiting for someone, but he was just still. The light hit his face in a way that he looked right through the glass, right at me. I instinctively slowed the treadmill. He didn't react. He didn't even blink. I told myself it was a coincidence. We worked on the same floor, and we'd exchanged a few polite hellos. That was it. He probably just happened to pick the same time to run errands, but he was there the entire time I finished, cooled down and stretched, still on that corner. I practically bolted out of the gym, ignoring the confused look from the guy at the front desk. I walked faster than usual the 3 blocks home and kept glancing over my shoulder. He wasn't there. I chalked it up to nerves, to being on edge after everything with Sarah. I was jumpy. I ordered pizza, watched some terrible reality TV, and tried to forget about it. Then I saw his car parked 2 streets over when I took the trash out later that night. It was dark, and I couldn't see him, but it was definitely his beat-up Honda Civic. I figured, okay, maybe he lives nearby and just hadn't mentioned it. It made sense. People don't always advertise where they live. Still, it felt off. Just a little. I started taking the long way to work. It added 15 minutes to the commute, but it avoided 3 streets where I'd seen his car. It felt ridiculous, honestly, like something out of a bad movie. I even started varying my gym times, going earlier or later, trying to throw off any pattern. I didn't even know what I was trying to throw off. Then last Saturday, I decided to hike Blackwood Trail. It's out of the city and pretty secluded. I needed to clear my head. I was 2 miles in, really getting into the rhythm of it, when I saw him, not right at me. Further up the trail, near that rocky overlook. He wasn't looking at me, just standing there, facing the view. I stopped. My heart hammered. It had to be someone else, right? There were other people who drove beat-up Honda Civics, but it was the same build, the same posture, and he was wearing that same faded blue jacket. I quickly turned around and walked back the way I came, picking up the pace. I didn't run. I didn't want to look panicked, but I walked fast. I kept checking behind me, convinced I'd see him following, but nothing. When I got back to the parking lot, his car wasn't there. I told myself he must be into hiking too, and it was a public trail. It was a big coincidence, a weird coincidence, but still, maybe he just liked the outdoors. But then, when I got back to my apartment, I found a flyer slipped under my door. It said, "Lost Cat, Mittens," and underneath was a blurry photo. It wasn't Mittens. It wasn't a cat at all. It was a picture of my building, a close-up of my front door. The cat flyer wasn't funny. It wasn't a joke. It was deliberate. I spent the rest of the night checking the locks, peering through the blinds. Every creak of the building sent a jolt through me. Every car door slamming sent a jolt through me. I barely slept. I kept thinking about Sarah, about how vulnerable she'd felt before everything happened. I told myself this was different. I told myself I was just being paranoid, but this felt like a prelude to something. The next morning, I decided to skip the gym. It was too exposed. It was too predictable. I went to the small market a few blocks over, trying to blend in. I looked at apples, pretending to read labels. That's when I saw him. Not directly, just a glimpse, reflected in the glass of the produce cooler. The blue jacket, the same build. He wasn't looking at me. He was just browsing the bread, but I knew. I grabbed a carton of eggs, paid quickly, and walked out, trying to act normal. I didn't look back. I walked fast, almost ran. Back to my apartment. I needed to get out. I needed to change something. I got in my car and decided to drive to my parents' place. 2 hours away. Maybe just a weekend, a change of scenery. As I pulled out of my parking spot, I saw his car. It wasn't parked across the street or even on the block. It was directly behind me. He hadn't been there a second ago. He was just there. I stalled, put the car in reverse, and backed into a different spot. He didn't move. He just sat there. It wasn't aggressive, not yet. It was waiting. I thought, maybe he lives here. Maybe he's a neighbor I've never noticed. Maybe it really is just a series of coincidences. A really unsettling series of coincidences. I took a deep breath, put the car in drive, and headed for the highway, praying he wouldn't follow. I glanced in the rearview mirror. He was there, but he didn't pull out right away. He waited until I was on the on-ramp, then he followed, keeping the same distance. It wasn't a pursuit, it was an escort. I didn't stop until I was almost to my parents' town. I pulled into a diner just off the highway. I needed coffee, and I needed to, feel solid again. I checked my mirrors constantly. He wasn't behind me, not that I could see. I called my dad, told him I was coming, and just needed to get away for a bit. He was understanding, which was good. While I was waiting for the coffee, I went back to the car. Something felt wrong. I don't even know what. I unlocked the driver's side door, and that's when I saw it. A small, folded piece of paper tucked under the windshield wiper, just like someone leaving a note. My hands were shaking as I unfolded it. It was a printout, a screenshot actually, of a photo. My building, taken from across the street. But it wasn't the building itself that made me sick. It was the timestamp on the image, 6:17 a.m. today. I hadn't even left for work yet. I hadn't even been awake. I looked around the diner parking lot, scanning every car, every face, nothing. I went back inside, barely touched my coffee. I thought maybe he was a process server, some kind of legal issue I wasn't aware of. It was stupid. I know, but I needed something to make sense of it. I drove the rest of the way to my parents', feeling like I was crawling. When I got there, my dad asked me what was wrong. I didn't show him the photo, not yet. I just said I was stressed and needed a break. He offered to call the police. I said no. What would I even say? That a guy in a blue jacket was following me. It sounded insane. Later, after dinner, I went out to the garage. My car was parked inside, and there, taped to the inside of my driver's side window, was another printout. This one, a map of the hiking trails near my apartment. With a single trail highlighted in yellow, I just stared at it. He knew where I went hiking. He knew. It's funny, the things you stop doing, not dramatically, not like a conscious decision, just they fade. I used to drive up to Black Bear Ridge every other weekend. I would hike the trails and get some air. Always alone, always. It was important. A reset, a way to just be. I haven't been back since that map. I tried once, maybe 6 months later. I drove most of the way, then just turned around. I told myself it was the weather or work, but it wasn't. It was the feeling, the absolute certainty that someone was watching. Not necessarily there, but knowing I was there. I started taking different routes to work, even if it added 20 minutes. I joined a gym. I started saying yes to after-work drinks, even when I didn't feel like it. Just being around people. It felt pathetic, like I was performing normalcy, but it was better than the alternative. I convinced myself it was a disgruntled client, something work-related. I'd had a particularly nasty exchange with a guy a few weeks before all this started. A real estate developer. He'd threatened to make me regret something. It felt flimsy even then, but it was something I could grasp. A motive. A reason. It's been years now. I still check my rearview mirror, especially at night. Not constantly, but often. And I absolutely will not go to a diner that has outdoor seating. I don't even like looking at diners with outdoor seating. It's just the open space, the visibility, the possibility. It feels foolish to admit it, but the thought of sitting there, exposed, like that, it still makes my skin crawl. It feels like a lifetime ago, and yet somehow it doesn't.